We are going to solve inequalities algebraically, and I'm going to focus on B here. We know that we have 2x squared minus 14x is greater than 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor 2x. That's the greatest common factor. So we have x minus 7 is greater than 0. So in order for me to know what the solution is, I have to have test points. So I'm going to say 2x equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0. I'm going to use these as my test points. So I divide by 2. So x equals 0, and then I add 7 to both sides. So we have x equals 7. So I'll go ahead and make a number line. This is 0. And this is 7. These are my test points. So I'm going to figure out, of course, it's never going to equal 0, so it's going to be open circle here and open circle here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test anything that's to the left of 0. So I have I have 2 times 0, parentheses 0. I'm replacing the x with 0, minus 7. Oh, yeah, that won't work, so we're going to use negative 1. So a number to the left of 0 is negative 1. And then we have delete, and we have negative 1. Negative 1. And we want to check if this value is going to be greater than 0. And it is. It is greater than 0. So we have 2 times negative 1, parentheses negative 1 minus 7. So everything in this side, I'm going to highlight. I'm going to say green is going to be part of the answer. Okay. Now I'm going to pick a number that's in between 0 and 7. So I'm going to use 1. So 2 times 1, parentheses 1 minus 7, right? And we want this to be greater than 0, so let's see what happens. Okay, it isn't greater than 0, so I'm going to use red to indicate, or pink to indicate that that's not going to be an answer. Okay, so let's use a number that's after 7, so let's say 8. So we have 2 times 8, parentheses 8 minus 7. And it is greater than 0, so I'm going to go ahead and use the color green to indicate that this is part of the answer. So you notice anything that is less than 0, anything that is less than 0, or anything greater than 7 will be part of the answer. Nothing in between 0 and 7, that won't be part of the answer. So it's going to be anything less than 0 or anything that is greater than 7. I have x squared minus 6x plus 5 is less than 0, so I'm going to find the factors of 5. So it's negative 5 and negative 1, because that's going to give you positive 5. And this also gives you the middle term. So I have x minus 5, and we have x minus 1 is less than 0. So I want to find my test points. I know that it will never equal 0, but I'm going to use it as a way to check what could be a possible answer. So we know that the first one is going to be the first number that we're going to be testing is before 5 or after 5. And we're also going to test before 1 or after 1. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to make a number line. I'm going to make a number line, and I'm going to go ahead and use these numbers as a way to test what is part of the answer. Oh, let me write it again. So we have 1 and 5. So if one of the answers is negative, or let's say it's false, then it's obviously false for the other answers, like for example that it's left of 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute 0. So I have 0 squared minus 6 times 0 plus 5. And we know that it is not less than 0, it's actually 5. So we know that everything that is to the left, everything to the left of 1 is not going to be part of the answer. And of course, we know that it has to be open circle at 1, since we know that that's going to be exactly 0 at 1. So now I need to pick a number that's between 1 and 5. So I'm going to use 2. So I have parentheses 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 5, and I want to see if that's less than 0. And that is less than 0, so I'm going to use green to indicate that every number between 1 and 5 is going to be true. And now we know that at 5, it's going to be exactly 0, so it's not going to be part of the answer. So let's go ahead and try 6. So we have 6 squared minus 6 times 6 plus 5. Enter. And it's greater than 0, so I'm going to indicate it. I'm going to be using pink to indicate that it's not part of the answer. So I know that the answer is going to fall. The answer is going to fall between 1 and 5. So I know that x is greater than 1, and I know that x is less than 5. Okay, so that's my answer. Okay. Solving inequalities using graphing. It says find the solution sets for 1/4 parentheses x minus 2 squared minus 1 greater than 0. And then the other one is 1/4 parentheses x minus 2 squared minus 1 less than 0. So what you do is you graph it, just like they did. And we want to know when it's greater than 0. So we know that in this graph, the only part that is greater than 0 occurs after 4. That means x is greater than 4. X is greater than 4. And it also occurs over here. X is less than 0. If you look at this part right here, this is when the y value is less than 0, and that won't be part of the solution. So the only part of the solution is when x is less than 0 or x is greater than 4. Now, the other case is, what if we want it when it's less than 0? Well, if it's less than 0, then the part that we're interested occurs down here. It occurs down here. So where does it occur? X is greater than 0 and x is less than 4. So we know that x is greater than 0 and x is less than 4. And so that's how you can use a graph to also come up with the answer for the quadratic inequality.